Hi guys, and welcome to my double review, and double because I'm going to be reviewing the C2 and the C3 from TINHIFI. Just makes sense, and I'm going to be comparing them with their respective, with a selection of respective competitors at their price point. Let's put it that way. Okay, straight into the boxes so we get this out of the way. Simple, very simple box. Actually, TINHIFI over the last couple of years has really minimalized its unboxing experience. So IM scheme over there. Inside here come the tips, which are okay. I mean, they're not bad tips. They're okay, you know. And the cable, which I'm going to show it to you now. The cable of the C2 is not the best, honestly. But then again, we're talking about a $29 IEM, so I guess we can't really complain. It's not so much the plug or the terminations. It's just the way the cable is, because it's not a braided, let's say, like the normal, usually braiding that we see. It's side by side. It just has a tendency to just get very, I don't know, just gets out of hand. That's it, period. Some paperwork, and that's it. So no carrying case, no nothing. They've just basically given us the IEM, and that's it. Okay, so that's C2. The cable, as I said, I'm not using it. It's I guess it's fine if you don't have any possibility to exchange it, but it's not the greatest. So that's the box of the C2 out. In the box of the C3, it's basically a copy paste. So again, some paperwork, tips coming here. The cable, I'm actually using this stock cable. It's not too bad. I'm also not using the stock tips. I'll show it to you now in a second. The cable is this. It's got nice accessories, actually, very nice accessories. And I mean, this is $49, so considering it's $49, they actually did spend a little bit of money and paid attention to the detail of the cable. So it's actually not a bad cable. I have to admit, it's not a bad cable, and I ended up not even swapping it because in terms of performance and everything, it's fine. Anyway, okay, so that's that there. Let's get into it with a little bit more detail, and let's see if I can position, convey as good as possible the information that I have for you. First, talking about the C2. The first thing is the fact that they've now seem to have departed from the very traditional style of their appearance in the shell. So no longer does it seem to be, do they seem to be stuck to this kind of bullet style like they are here on the T2 DLC. So the C2 has gone for this shell, which has the kind of got this, it's a metal shell to start with. It's got this kind of campfire audio vibe, KZ ZS6 if I'm not mistaken, an oldie from them. It's got that vibe going. It's a nice sturdy shell, solidly built. What can I say? Funny enough, although by looking at it you would think that you really wouldn't have any issues with the fit, I actually encountered a little bit of an issue with the fit with regards to the IM actually sitting in place, and I'm guessing that maybe that has to do with the way that this whole nozzle section has been designed. I don't know. It just I really struggled, and I ended up settling for these BGVP tips, the 08s in the large size, which were the only ones that actually allowed me to get the fit that I required. Isolation is once you have the right tip is fine, but yes, do pay attention to the fit. That although it seems it's not going to be an issue, there can be problems arising from it. And I mean, initially I was running a wide bore tip because I liked the way that the wide bore was sounding in here, and the fact that it was continuously falling off just made me have to change for this narrow bore or standard bore tip, because it has a little bit of extra length which allows for then a deeper insertion into my ear canal. I mean, if you just, let me actually just grab you here the tip that I was using. These tips are actually quite good. These BQEYZ tips, they're very similar to the BGVP wide bores, but just so that you have an idea here of the difference. Okay, so that difference there in the height of one versus the other actually dictates the one coming loose very easily and the other one is actually staying on. Also, the one is a large diameter, as you can see. Okay, and then the narrow bore was a slightly smaller diameter. I tried the large of this one as well, but it just didn't also yield the results that I was hoping. Oh, by the way, talking about these tips and I mean, this was a situation that happened already some time ago with the MT3, where the tips actually made a huge difference to the performance. Well, they always do. For the majority of the cases, tips are actually the main game changer is a bit of a word, but the main point that can be altered and where differences can be seen in the performance of an earphone, as opposed to what people might think, oh, cables are the big thing. No, cables are not the big thing. Cables are important, and I'll be doing a video about cables briefly, but it's tips. Tips are the ones that will make or break an IEM, in my opinion. And these particular wide bore tips here from BQEYZ, okay, I've used them extensively and they work really well. And if you remember, I reviewed recently the Keyboom Allure, and I did a whole bunch of tip rolling with it and so on. I ended up just leaving the stock tips because they were the ones that were giving me the best results. And during now this listening session, actually was during the listening session of the C3. At one point, I just, let me just try these tips, because these ones were actually the only ones I tried the medium sized, but it didn't give me the desired result that I wanted, so I didn't even bother with going with a large size. So I took these tips and I tried the large size on the Keyboom, on the Allure, and wow, what a difference it made. By that I mean, and please take note of what I'm going to say now, is I'm not saying that it radically improves or radically changes its positioning compared to the IEMs that I had it going up against. No, it doesn't. The Allure is a good IEM, but it has and suffers from an issue, which is its price, which, it should be an IEM that should be priced at more or less the value here of the C3. So $50-$60. If it was priced in this category, then yes, then it would be a viable alternative. It would still not beat it would still not beat the C3, but it would be an alternative to the C3. Okay. And with the wide bore tips, so if you guys have bought the Keyboom Allure, if anybody has bought the Keyboom Allure and you want to hear it really start performing substantially better than what it did with the stock tips and with another 4 or 5 different tips that I tried. I mean, I tried, and actually the funny thing was that I even tried the Tanstrom APB wide bores on it. I tried the Clarion, the Tri-Clarion tips on it, and go and figure, this BQEYZ wide bore tip is the one that actually allowed it to shine. Anyway, back onto what I wanted to, and what we were talking about, which is the C2 and the C3. So yeah, once you've got the right tip, fit, isolation, all of that stuff becomes a non-issue, and that's it. Okay, what have I selected to compare it with? And there's one particular IEM here that actually could play both fields of the price because of the price that it has. And I'm talking about, of course, the QE ears, the cadenza. I mean, this thing is $35. That's $29. If you can afford $29, you can afford $35. That's the way I look at it. I have decided to actually put it in this group because of the way that it sounds. Is more familiar with this, or more similar to these, than it is similar to these. Okay, and what are these? Well, I have here the Tangzu one ear, roughly $22, so a little bit cheaper than the C2. I've got the original giant killer, which is rather the 7 hertz zero. You can get these now for like $17, so really cheap, so significantly cheaper than the C2. And I've got another Tangzu, the Shimin Li, the Shimin Li. Okay, this also priced at around $32, $33, I'm not mistaken. What does this sound like? It's another take on the Harman curve. Okay, nice, clean, detailed bass, decent speed. It's using an LCP and plus PU polyurethane diaphragm, so I'm guessing that's the reason why it's got reasonable speed. No real bleed into the mids. Nice vocals. Male vocals, I think, are the ones that shine a little bit better here. Female vocals can get a little bit not harsh or aggressive, but can just get a little bit intense. Okay, but not a. Honestly, this is just me really being hard. Okay, it's not a need. If I'm gonna go down that road, then this is a screamer. The Shimin Li is a screamer by comparison with the C2. Okay, so a little bit, like I was saying, a little bit intense. Timbre and tonality is for the most part fine. I mean, if you consider the price, it's fine. It's not an issue. I was just checking here my notes. As for the remainder of the technicalities, so soundstage, imaging, detail retrieval is actually pretty decent, and it has to do with the fact that it's got good extension. So detail retrieval is very much fine. Imaging as well, I really didn't have any bad things to say about it. The image is fine, especially considering the price. Soundstage, although there's that feeling of twinklies and sparklies and all that, it somehow just sounded a little bit congested, a little bit closed. Okay, so the soundstage wasn't bad. I mean, come on, it's like I sometimes say, myself, perhaps I've also done that to a certain extent, but I always try and explain myself very much so. But sometimes we reviewers, we have a tendency of being a little bit too hard, and we forget, and that's something that I try and constantly never to forget, which is the price point that an IM is located at, always competing at. I cannot approach an IM like the C2 and expect from it what I would expect from, let's say, for the sake of this argument, from an Anoli VX. I cannot. It just doesn't make sense. Or if I want to compare it with a single DD, I cannot approach this IM and expect it to have the same performance as a Soft Ears Twilight. It makes absolutely no sense. So then, having said that, it doesn't make sense that I have become super nitpicky about its inabilities or its flaws. And I try and see and assess an IM by how its abilities are for the price and compared to what is available. How does it do? How does it soundstage compared to XYZ? How does it image compared to XYZ? What's the tonality compared to XYZ? Which are all the same price. Okay, and obviously, if we are then coming across IMs which are very, very good surprises, I mean, the Olina and the Olina SE, those are good surprises. That you're thinking $100, and all of a sudden you're getting performance of an IM of almost $200, and some IMs even more than $200 that are not as capable as the Olina. Anyway, back onto this. Let me position it in the following manner. If the 7 hertz, when it came out, and it still is to a certain extent, an IM known for its how clinically detailed and all the squiggles and everything you can pick up and everything, but at a price of having a lean bass which detracts some fun. So there's not a fun and engaging approach to music reproduction. It's a very methodical approach to music reproduction. Okay, if on the Shimin Li we have a very intense presentation of the mid bass, it's intense, it's engaging, okay, it's fun. But then when you start cranking it up, things scale in an awkward manner, and it goes all over the place. It no longer is as intense, but as controlled and as well mannered as it is at lower volumes. Okay, and these two were easily surpassed by the TINHIFI, by the 1 year. The 1 year, if I have to nitpick it, it's the fact that the shell just looks very okay, fine, fair enough, it's $22, so I'm not gonna be demanding, but somehow the shell of the Zero just looks better quality. But in terms of the sound, it has, although graphically it doesn't seem like it, but it has just that extra little bit of amount of bass which makes it makes it have that fun factor which is lacking on the Zero. Okay, this is for me, and putting aside the price, this is an upgrade over the 1 year. Okay, I know that is a very bold statement what I've just said. I know, but that's what I hear. I hear a IM which is a little bit more detailed, above 6K than the 1 year. That little bit extra of detail, well, it's doesn't have to please everybody, but it's well done. I didn't find if the treble there, yes, is relaxed and it's detailed and it's not over here by comparison it's got a lot more energy, but I didn't find it at any point to be aggressive or harsh or unpolished. No, and I think the fact that there's that difference in the timbre, because there the tonality and the timbre do sound more realistic, more correct. Here they have a tendency of sounding a little bit more clinical, like on the 7 Hertz, the Zero. If the tonality and so on and so forth is maybe not the most correct, okay, when I compare it to the 1 year, what it gains in terms of imaging is worthwhile. What it gains in terms of it's got a sense of engagement which you notice is just a little bit extra above the 1 year, and I think it has to do with the fact that it's got this metal shell. I think this metal shell somehow does create some resonances internally, because and this is one thing which not many people are aware of or actually have paid attention to. But in home speakers, the reason, well, the most basic of damping is just putting some rock wool inside or some fiberglass wool inside to just dampen away any resonances that might occur. And because the majority of speaker boxes are made of wood, they start having their own resonant frequency, vibrating at their own resonant frequency, and you want to do away with all of that, because then it adds harmonics to the music reproduction, and most of the times it just colors things in a bad way. Obviously here in an IEM, in a much smaller scale, in a micro scale, we have the same kind of issues. We also have resonances inside of the shell, and the fact that the shell is metal will have a different effect than if the shell is plastic or if the shell is resin. And I think that the fact that it has a metal shell obviously has contributed to giving it certain harmonics, which in this particular case have actually given us a coloration which is nice and pleasant. Having said all of this, I'm not saying that this one is dramatically better or radically better, or that this is now, no, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that for me, I end up preferring more the sound that this gives me over the sound of the 1 year. It's minor differences, very, very minor differences, nothing which is, major, but it does. Obviously, the 1 year has one very good thing going for it, which is its price. I mean, you can pick this up with some discounts for like $18. This is still at least another $10 to $12 more expensive, which means an increase of price of about 40% over the one over the other. So, in conclusion, I'm not going to say that this is now the best one at this, let's say, under $30 price bracket, but I'm going to say that it's a very solid choice over the likes of these two, for example. Very solid in that it's way more polished than the Shimingly. Okay, the C2 is way more polished, way more, you notice a more refined approach to everything. Okay, so Shimingly gets taken out of the equation. It's got a lot more bass engagement over the 7 Hertz, without losing any of the detail and all the twinklies and the sparkles that the 7 hertz is known for. So in my opinion, also the 7 hertz gets taken out of the equation, which leaves us basically with these two options, which will be dependent then on how far you can stretch yourself. You know, they trade blows. That's it. Okay, so that's C2 out of the way. Let me just make some space here so things don't get messy. Okay, so now on to the C3. Okay, C3, metal shell, oh my god, resin shell, at least what seems to be a resin shell. It's got enough density to not sound like a normal plastic shell. The shell is reminiscent in its overall shape, as you can see, to the shell of the kiwi ears, which also seems to be a kind of a resin plastic, but it does sound slightly thinner, okay, as opposed to, you don't really pick it up. It's not easy to pick up, but you notice a more solid thump here as opposed to there. It's a little higher pitched, a little bit lower pitched. Anyway, on to what matters. The kiwi ears, the cadenza, has created havoc in this under $50 bracket, in the sense that for $35 you are getting an IEM which is very much capable of keeping up with the performance of the likes of like the Chapeau and Olina. And I know that's a bold statement, but it's true. If you actually are able to get it to fit properly, which is not a real problem, but you get the right tip, you get it to fit properly, and you compare it to the Olina SE. I'm not even going to compare it to the stock Olina, because compared to the stock Olina, I personally think that this is perhaps not as technically proficient. Fine, I'm not going to say that, but it's more engaging than the original Olina compared to the Olina SE, the revised version, which has a little bit more bass and a slightly more smoother post pin gain section. This keeps up with it very nicely. Yes, the Olina does ultimately show its ranks, and you know, okay, I'm the boss here, all right, so stay in your place. But the fact that this is able to keep up with the Chapeau and Olina, I think, is a testament to how good it plays. And I'm not saying this shilling it, or no, I'm not. I'm just saying it as it is, because that's the reality. And what I'm saying about this, I said about it's 98% the same. I said it about the Chapeau and Sensibel, and I said it about the XINHS 100. Those two IMs in stock format, no, because they've got no filter, no dampening on the vent. But once you put an oxygen filter on either one of those two, they graph almost the same as this, and they sound almost the same as this. And they were actually around even before this came out. Okay, the Sensibel is about the same price, and the IVPIQ 100, it was originally it was about $80. It's now dropped to $43, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so this plays really good. It's got a nice full, again, harmony style signature. You know, it plays really well. So, and it came and reap havoc. That's the reality. It kind of came and spoiled things. Prior to this existing, under the $50 bracket, if you wanted something polished, and putting aside as well the Sensibel and the IVPIQ, you had the T2 DLC. The T2 DLC, I think, has very much gone under the radar, honestly. And I think it's basically because of the problem of its T2. So it's another T2. Okay, whatever. The T2 DLC plays really well. I would ultimately say, and this is $49, I would ultimately say that this is actually even superior to the T3 Plus. Its problem is only one: fit. Fit of this thing is it's either it fits you nicely and you find the right tip and you are able to ram this thing into your ear your canals and make it stick, or then it's going to be an issue, period. That's the truth. You had another one as well, which was also good sounding, but even more complicated in terms of the fit, and that in its original format, the original Ola was very, very underwhelming. That diffuse style tuning with the head-related transfer function into the mix and blah blah blah. No, this is the bass edition, which kind of fixes all of that, gives it bass, which the original one didn't have, and it plays well. It plays really well. Two big problems. Fit, it is horrible. Okay, I'm a Tension fan, diehard Tension fan. Fit is horrible. What was in the mind of the engineers when they made it this way? What? I don't understand. And then, besides the fit, it's the fact that it needs power. You connect this up to your phone and this thing will sound like a dead horse. That's it. It needs power. All of this introduction to say what and what am I going to say about the C3? The C3 is in essence a T2 DLC in a friendly shell, okay, capable of a performance which is basically identical to the performance of the Kiwi Ears cadenza. Great bass, really, really nice bass. Ultimately, maybe a little bit more rumble on the cadenza as opposed to the C3. But I mean, the difference is minimal. Trust me, that it's not like a day and night difference, okay? Let me just put them over here. Oh, actually, let me try and see if I can put them in a way that you guys can actually see the shells. Okay, yeah, there you go. So, the cadenza on the left, ultimately, a little bit more sub-bass. In terms of the fullness, the thickness of the bass, transition to the mid bass, the thump, the same. Transition into the mids and the way the pin again is done, again, the same. Nothing. Male vocals, female vocals, timbre, tonality are excellent. Excellent. Where then do you see some differences? You start seeing some differences in the presence and brilliance area, or in other words, in the air, in the twinklies and the sparklies. You occasionally see the Kiwi Ears having a little bit more detail than the C3, but at the cost of losing a little bit of polish. Okay, so again, they trade blows. They are trading blows. This has maybe just a little bit less detail in the treble and in the upper mids. Okay, just a little bit less. But what it loses out in terms of detail to the cadenza, okay, it gains in terms of being more polished, more refined. It's not huge day and night differences, but you notice that you are listening to something which has had a little bit more, perhaps, attention to detail paid to it. A little bit more polish. That's it. Okay, just a little bit more polish. And that basically, I think, kind of summarizes everything, because in terms of its hardware side, how it fits and how it isolates and everything, I mean, perfect. This shell is a similar shell as well to the T3 Plus, so no issues in fit. The sound, as I was saying, it's almost the same thing as the sound of the cadenza, and the sound of the cadenza as well is not that much more different than the sound of the T2 DLC. Basically, and I'm going to take the Ola out of the equation, because although it sounds good, the fit is really the issue here. These three, honestly, you can't go wrong with any one of these three, because these three are all really good. 49, 49, 35. That's the first thing that you have to keep in mind. Okay? Second thing to keep in mind. Good fit. Okay? But maybe you do have ears that fits well. So it again comes into the equation. Is it worth it or not? Okay? And then These two sound very similar. Again, on certain occasions, I find the T2 DLC to just have a little bit more detail, a little bit more clarity, okay, over the C3. But again, it seems on certain songs and with certain voices that clarity or that added cleanliness is perhaps at a cost of a little bit more, of a little bit of a loss of polish. Although if and the same situation happens here, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, I notice more lack of polish here than I do there. So I would say that is probably closer. This one a little bit further away. But look, guys, the differences are minimal. Honestly, the differences are minimal. It's a wreck. I'm gonna say it's a wreck. If the Kiwi Ears cadenza is a wreck, I'm gonna say this is a wreck. And let's forget this one because of the fact that the fit might not be the ideal. If the Kiwi Ears cadenza didn't exist, the C3 would be the king. That's as simple as that, honestly. And if I actually have to take all of these IEMs here and say, okay, which is the one that really stands out as the overall winner is a big word, probably I would say the cadenza. Honestly, I would probably say the cadenza, because what it lacks in terms of little details and so on and so forth, soundstage and imaging and blah blah blah, which trust me, it doesn't lose to these two. But let's assume that that's your cup of tea, that's what you want. So you would say that, oh, the 7 Hertz is the absolute best in that aspect. Okay, let's put it that way. Okay, what it loses to that, and it doesn't lose, it more than gains in terms of fun factor, better bass quality, better bass, everything. I would go as far as to say, and I was going to include the Truth Ears Zero in this equation here. And honestly, maybe my initial impression with the Truth Ears Zero wasn't the best, because I had 2 units. I bought 2 units, and the 2 units were absolute mess. Probably some of the worst channel imbalance I've seen ever. Okay, I mean, I was talking about differences in the bass of 8 dBs in one of the sets. I eventually fixed it. I got it working, and then I got a third set. That one is fine. And honestly, comparing the Zero, the Truth Ears Zero, to these two, and the simple fact that IEM has 2 drivers, one dedicated subwoofer and another one then doing the rest of the frequency range, and that is still having those 2 drivers is not enough to beat the cadenza or to beat the C3. That is my very honest opinion. The Truth Ears Zero, and no, this is not an attack onto Truth Ears, nothing. Not at all. It's the same $50. The 2 drivers, in my opinion, do not have a performance advantage over these 2. They don't. That's it. Period. These 2 are much better. Okay. Anyway, guys, rambling here, going on like I usually do. Going to show you the graphs now quickly and call it a day. All right. Take care. Okay, guys, so straight away I start off with the graphs for the C2, and I've got 2 graphs here to just kind of show you what I've said already quite a few times, and it seems that not a lot of people seem to think that is the case, and I just wanted to show you in visibly so you can actually see. This is the C2, okay, using the tip that I ultimately ended up using for the audition, which was the 08 large-sized BGVP, okay? And as you can see, just like I mentioned, nice sub-bass into mids, no bleed, nice and smooth, pinna gain, plateaus here. Then we have this dip here at around 6, peak coupler, and then extension passed. And this one is the same IEM but using the wide bore medium. So bass, everything stays the same, a little bit less energy here in this 4-5K area, no dip, carries on, then a bigger dip and then extension. Okay, and trust me when I say that you can hear differences. The one with the wide bore has better technicalities. Unfortunately, like I said, because of the way that the nozzle is designed and the shell is designed, for me to get a performance that is what you see here, and okay, for me to have it sit in my ear, I had to be pushing it in. If I use the medium-sized tips, I had to be pushing it slightly in to hold it in place, otherwise it would fall off. If I use the large-sized wide bore, they would ultimately still fall because they didn't have enough area to grab in the minimum amount of needed to stay in the place. Okay, so I ended up using just the narrow bore ones. This is the performance. Okay, the technicalities weren't as good, yes, but it's not a day and night difference, all right? But as you can see, definite difference there with regards to the tip choice. This compared to then the IMs which I mentioned. Okay, let me see. First one, truth here's 0. This one. The leanness of the bass is evident here in the graph and very noticeable when you listen to it. Let me actually just put this in red so you guys can see this a little bit better. Sorry. Okay, there you go. Over here, you don't really notice much difference. Everything stays basically the same. I mean, honestly, just basically the same. And then again, the dip and the extension the same. Ultimately, the reason, well, not the reason, because the truth is the C2 sounds as detailed and has, technical capabilities as good as the 0. Perhaps those more die-hard will say, oh, but somehow the resonances inside make the C2 sound perhaps a little bit less polished as composed as compared to the 0. Yeah, okay, fine, I can accept that. Personally, I think the C2 is a superior IEM. It has everything that the 0 has in terms of its technicalities and decent enough imaging, soundstage, and so on and so forth, with a little bit of added warmth in the mid bass to convey music, a sense of fun, which the 0 does lack. With certain genres it does lack. Okay, so that's that. Next to the one ear, let me just make sure. Yes, next to the 1 ear. You do not, although graphically you see a little bit of a difference, it's the same. The bass, very similar. Where yes, you do see less detail, okay, where one will perhaps come across as more open and the other one a little bit closed, is in the past 8-9K area. You see there's a little bit more sparklies and twinklies on the C2, but honestly, both the C2 and the 1 ear are the ones that stand out in the sub $30 price. They definitely are. So it's not really that one is superior or better than the other. They trade blows. Although the difference here seems significant, when you're actually listening to it, the differences are there, noticeable, but not as in your face as you would expect. Okay, and finally, just so that we also get, so take the Tangsu 1 ear out, take the 7 Hertz out, we don't need it anymore. The Shimin-Lee, where is the Shimin-Lee? Here we go. And finally, yeah, the Shimin-Lee. Okay, the Shimin-Lee, by comparison to the C2, it's a dark IEM, it's dark sounding with a very energetic post 2K. So this transition here from mids to upper mids is a little bit energetic and it's noticeable. It's an area that personally myself I pick up on it, especially when you start cranking the volume. Okay, and then it's a little bit dark by comparison, so not as detailed, not as capable. In my terms. The graph I've just put on now, let me just take the original Shimin. So this new green line that I've just put on, this is the retune that I did on the Shimin, where I lowered that peak there that it had at 2K. I just lowered that peak, and it just cleaned up the Shimin very nicely. It made the Shimin way more tolerable to scaling, so you can now crank up the volume without things losing control. It still keeps it a little bit on the dark side, but it's nice. It sounds really good, and this is a mod that honestly I do recommend those that have the Shimin that maybe didn't feel the IM 100% to their liking. Get yourself a 500 grade filter, and you put a 500 grade filter on the nozzle. You take out the original filter that's on the nozzle and you put a 500 grade. You're not going to damage, it's a reversible mod, you're not going to damage anything, it's not going to, nothing will it's going to get spoiled. Okay, trust me. You do that, and this is the response you'll get, and I'm sure it will be a much more pleasant and pleasurable response. So let's just get the Shimin out of the equation here as well. Okay, now let's go on to the C3. And where is the C3? The C2, C3. There we go. Yeah, number 14. Just for sake of comparison, I'm just going to put quickly the C2 on there. Actually, let me put the one with the tip that I used. Okay. When you look at the graphs, you say, okay, they're going to sound identical, and they don't. They don't. The bass on the C3 has got a nice warmth. It's got a nicer. It's just. I don't know. It's you have to listen to it. It's just got a different timbre, a different tonality, which is very, very nice. Honestly, it's very nice. I think, well, I'm sure it has to do with they're using an LCP driver there as well, but it's a pure LCP driver, not with no PU, or maybe it's got a higher concentration of LCP. I really wouldn't know. All I do know is that it sounds nice, and yes, it has lost a little bit of detail as compared to the C2. The C3 is not as detailed, but it's polished. It's got a lot of finesse. Okay, while the C2 by comparison sounds a little bit more aggressive almost. Okay. Anyway, take out the C2, just leave the C3. That's what we want. First comparison, so I get it out of the way straight away, is with the Ola Bass Edition. And with the Ola Bass Edition, you can see that they are graphing almost identical. Okay, and yes, the Ola does sound really nice. Again, it's an IM, much like the T2 DLC. That didn't get much attention, and it's all, and I'm saying this with all respect, it's all down to Tanström's fault. They should have taken the opportunity of redoing the bass, the bass edition, and they could have done a little bit of a change on the shell, and they could have called it, instead of the Ola, call it something else, and make it with a shell that would fit properly, because that is a nightmare to get to. I mean, honestly, you have to have really small ears to have it for it to be able to fit properly in any sort of manner. That's it. So C3 versus Ola. Okay, now number this is out. This is out. T2 DLC. Yes, there we go. T2 DLC. All right. T2 DLC is what I was saying in my review. It's almost identical. As you can see, the graph is almost identical. It is. There's a little bit more detail on the DLC, which is noticeable, but it's a very polished detail as well. It's polished. It's well presented. I didn't find it in any way aggressive form, and nothing, not grainy, anything. Really nice. I like the T2 DLC. Its problem again is a fit, but compared to the Ola, it's magic. All right. So that's a T2 DLC, very similar sounding, and that's why I said they were very similar sounding. Okay. Number 15, I believe that's what we want. No, this is out as well. Oh yeah, this is the actual IM 13. Where is it? Chapoa, Nolina, Kiwi Escadenza. There we go. Okay, that's the cadenza. Let me just quickly align it because it's out of whack. There we go. Again, another situation very similar to the T2 DLC. Almost identical up to, well, 5K, days, 5, 6K. They're identical, and you can hear it. What you then do notice is that there's a little bit more detail up top in the brilliance area, more sparklies, more twinklies. On the cadenza, a little bit, just a little bit. But that little extra there, contrary to what happens to in the T2 DLC, it's just a little bit a little bit less polished. Okay, so you got more detail, you got more air, you got more space, but the detail is become a little bit less refined. The detail on the C3 is always very refined. It might be less, but it's polished. It's got finesse. It's got, that's it. Very much similar to the case of the T2 DLC as well. There's more detail on the T2 DLC, but it's got finesse, it's got polish, and I think that's basically down to the quality of the driver. All right, next one. No. I think I've showed you all. It was the T2 DLC, the Ola. What am I missing here? The cadenza. Yeah, I've got it all. That's it. They're all there. And that's it, guys. So, TINHIFI C3, a definitely wreck it, as I do wreck the cadenza. Okay. Very good IEMs, either one of them. The C2 is just, the fact that it's so, when you have the cadenza and then you have the C2 at $29, you question yourself, what should I do? But anyway, look, the fact that we have so many options allows all of us to be able to have access to something which is within our budget. And although we might think that $5 or $6 or $10 is not a big difference, for some people that is a lot of money. So for a lot of people, that's the difference between them having 2 meals a day or them having 3 meals a day, let's put it that way. I'm at least happy that there is a lot of options and that everybody can end up having a decent sounding IM for the amount of money that they have available to spend for that, right? Anyway, guys, that's it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.